How's it going, Real Dealers? It is your man, Philip Hall. And today I have a very special guest with me. She's actually went to the same high school as me. She's in the graduating class of, I believe, wait, when did you graduate?
From 2015.
Yeah, so 2015, a graduate of my high school, Oakland Military Institute. And she is also an alumna of Georgetown University. And she is also a superhero. Well, like in my eyes, I see her as a superhero during this COVID-19 pandemic because of her business and her efforts of creating masks from the comfort of her home and mailing it and selling it all across the country and around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome May-Linh Huynh to the Real Deal Bros podcast. So, May-Linh, how you doing?
Thank you so much, Philip, for that. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. Just at home. I'm glad I'm finished with my freshman year of college. My freshman year of college went very well. Well, I mean,
Awesome.
it had a weird ending, of course, with the COVID-19 pandemic, but I'm still glad I was able to get my schoolwork done, and still, with the power of Zoom, thankfully, it was able to, allow me and allow a lot of other students across the country to get their work done and still be able to graduate on time. So yeah, it's been pretty good so far.
Cool.
Yeah. So May-Linh, being a guest on a podcast, I guess, it's always fitting to tell people about your, background and really how, just how you've been doing with the COVID-19 pandemic, and also, why are you doing like in the pandemic, and what are you learning from it so far?
Yeah. So actually, when I went to Georgetown, I graduated with a degree in global health. And so what global health is, it's a sector of public health where we focus on diseases that can reach globally. So like COVID-19. But during my time at Georgetown, I had the amazing opportunity of interning at the World Health Organization. And so a lot of the diseases that I was focusing on were infectious diseases. We call them communicable diseases. So diseases that can be transmitted from people to people or from animals to people. More specifically, though, I was working on zoonotic diseases, so things like rabies or schistosomiasis, like stomach worms. So a lot of these diseases are primarily focused in developing countries. And so the Philippines, Vietnam, parts of India, Indonesia, Malaysia, etc. And so, yeah, so during my time at Georgetown, I really focused on diseases in developing countries. But since graduation, I was trying to find opportunities where I can also somehow eventually go back to the Philippines or Vietnam. And so I actually was working on a lot of projects in Vietnam on things like mental health, smoking cessation, fatty liver disease. And that's actually what I do now. So I'm doing research on fatty liver disease, which affects everyone, no matter where you are. But with COVID happening, we've done a 180 and we're focusing on how COVID affects minorities specifically. So it's really amazing work that we're doing. And then this math business is actually a side project that I'm doing. It's not my full-time job.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah. Well, side project, is still, I still value like your efforts in trying to stop the spread of COVID-19. I feel like, there's a lot of people in the community that will look at you as like a leader, like, it's inspirational because, like it is a very big problem in our country and really in our world today. It's, again, like this has been one of the biggest pandemics since, I think like the last biggest pandemic that we had was like the Ebola crisis or the Spanish flu. And yeah, it's just, the way that has impact or affected a lot of countries around the world is definitely glad that we have people like you that are putting as much effort behind trying to stop the spread. And yeah, it's definitely something that needs to be recognized more.
For sure, yeah. So actually pandemic, in terms of pandemic, we haven't seen something in this scale in a long time. Just to put it to scale, Ebola primarily happened in Central Africa. And so it was very isolated to that region. We've had some cases of travelers coming to the States, but we were able to control that. Whereas,
right.
Let's backtrack. Ebola was also a disease that was transmitted via blood. So if you were in contact with someone's blood, and so it was easier to control because most people don't touch blood.
Yeah.
Whereas COVID, it's a respiratory disease, and so because it's transmitted via droplets, you know, anyone can contract it, like through coughing on someone or through sneezing or touching unsanitary surfaces. So it's a different transmission route, and that's why it's a lot bigger than past diseases.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess with that, you know, we could go into the idea of how you started your face mask business, because yeah, when you pull up your website, or when someone looks up your website, there's like a lot of different assortments of, you know, like masks for like kids, you know, parents, you know, grandparents, you know, and like I mean, like just, you know, jokingly figured, you know, like it's pretty much like a mask for everybody, like including dogs and cats.
For sure.
Yeah, but yeah, I think, you know, we could go into the idea of how, like, where did you get the idea to start your own face mask business?
Right. So, my family, we come from a line of seamstress and seamsters. So my grandpa actually was a seamster during the Vietnam War, and he was making military uniforms. And so essentially what COVID is, it sort of is like a war zone where you're preparing all of these resources for our frontline workers and just for people who need it in general. But he taught his kids, he had 10 kids, all how to sew. When my aunts and uncles moved here to the States, including my mom also came here, they kind of left their seamstress careers behind and then took on new careers. My mom's a teacher and my aunts are on nail techs. With them being affected by COVID, schools are closed, nail salons are closed. They wanted to just reuse or like pick up their skills and make face masks for the community. And we actually started out just by making them for our family. My dad is a tow truck driver, so he's like always outside, always interacting with people, and he needed face masks. And he started just like selling them to his customers. And then I just thought, you know, why can't we redirect our skills and make these face masks for the general public? And so that's when I decided to post it on my Instagram that I was selling face masks. And it got really big to the point where I couldn't like handle it. So I created a website so that I wasn't the one doing all the logistics.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and also for those that want to find out more about MayLinhs mask making business, you can go to maylin.squarespace.com. Like for people watching on YouTube, I'll definitely make sure to put the link in the description so you guys can go check her out. And like, yeah, and I've seen the website too. I've seen like the different types of mask designs that you've made, and I think it's very interesting. It's very vibrant how you have so many color patterns and, you know, like different designs. And I think you also have different designs for the straps as well.
Yes, so we do soft cloth, we do elastic, we do strings to tie. So, you know, we have face masks for everybody, kids, adults with small faces, adults with big faces, people with beards. So we have a mask for everyone.
Yeah, it's awesome. So I think you kind of mentioned it before how, you know, your family, you come from a line of seamstress, and just in the process, because I do hear that your masks are all homemade. So how exactly do you design the mask?
Yeah. So do you mean as in color or the template of the mask?
I mean, like it could be the whole breakdown, just the color patterns, and even just the material.
Gotcha. Yeah. So our materials are, some are poly cotton, which means it's a polyester versus a cotton blend, and then some are rayon, which is a natural fabric, and then some are cotton too. But we chose, I actually have a mask here, but we chose a mask design so that it like comfortably fits around your face. And it also, it cinches at the nose so that you don't necessarily need like a wire band because it actually like forms to your nose. And also our mask reaches to under the chin. So it's not like, it doesn't stop at your chin, it goes all the way under so that you're protected, and that if you're coughing, you're not coughing out. But it's actually a very common design in Vietnam. And so we used one of the face masks that we brought back from Vietnam, and then we just cut around it and started sewing.
Hmm. So how do you get the color patterns? Because I saw like there's one that actually kind of stood out. Like, well, you being a Georgetown graduate, you had one that were in the school's colors. You had like a blue and a gray one where it was like blue on one side, gray on the other side. So like where do you come up with the ideas of making like different color patterns? Like I even also saw one where it was like very flowery, and I think like it had a name for it. It was like the mother or
Oh,
mother.
mother knows best.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So, in terms of the solid colors, we have to use whatever's available, and so the fabric store has like a ton of colors. But I also wanted to make sure that the customers like it and that they are going to want to wear it and that they're happy when they're wearing it. So, for example, with Georgetown, I know that as schools are trying to come up with a plan to bring students back to campus, people are going to need to wear masks. And personally, like, I love Georgetown, and so I do not mind rocking a blue and gray mask just to show my school spirit.
Yeah.
But our other designs really come from my mom's like love of different fabric types. That Mothers Know Best design is she has like 10 of them, and she just loves that color so much that I named it after her. Mother Knows Best.
Oh. That's very sweet. Very sweet.
Yeah, we also have a Golden State Warriors color, so blue and gold, because being from the Bay, I have to support the Bay Area.
Yeah. Ever made one in A's colors, like green and gold? Like.
Oh, that's actually a good idea. I didn't think of
too,
I should do that. I'll make one for you. Send me your address later, and then I'll send one over.
I would definitely want like a green and gold mask to wear. That would be really cool. But yeah, even though like technically for those that don't know, Georgetown and St. John's, me being a St. John's guy, there is that big rivalry together. But yeah, like they do, like MayLin does make colors, like for those St. John's people that do listen to the podcast, there are red and white or red and blue colors for the mask. So,
oh my goodness. Yeah, let me I don't know what St. John's colors are, but if you let me know, then we can definitely create some masks for you.
Yeah, definitely. But so as far as like the different variety of masks, because I know for me right now, like the type of mask that I usually wear, on occasion I'll wear like the surgical kind of blue colored mask, and also just kind of like the circular mask for like the industrial style. So is there like any preference or like any recommendations for what type of mask people should be wearing, or is it just that if you're covered up you'll be fine? Like, is there anything behind that?
Yeah, so as we all know, there's a global shortage of masks, surgical masks, and N95s. The backstory to that is that earlier in 2020, we had numerous occasions where 3M, the company that makes N95s, they had to mobilize their resources for the Philippine volcano eruption. And so they were already sending a ton of masks there. And then also the Australian wildfires, they were already sending a ton of masks to the wildfires. And, COVID was really just the cherry on top. And so there's a global shortage of N95s now. So it's recommended that if you are not a frontline worker, if you're not a physician or a nurse working with COVID patients, and you're not surrounded with, 20, 30, 40 COVID patients in a closed environment, then you shouldn't be wearing the N95s. Those should be reserved for our frontline workers who are surrounded by sick patients every single day.
Wait, so can you go a little bit more on like what the N95 mask is? Is that that's the surgical mask, right?
No, so an N95 mask is something that can filter 95% of particulates in the air, and so it is like it's the gold standard for anyone who is working in the front lines from getting sick. So if I were a physician wearing an N95 mask and I'm surrounded by COVID patients, it's supposed to filter any like virus particles in the air so that I won't get sick or the wearer won't get sick.
Yeah, because I do hear that the way that spreads, when people talk or when people cough or sneeze, there's the little droplets that fall, like the little particles that fall, or just that get captured by the air. And just doing that, and also seeing people wearing masks, I feel like, yeah, the mask does have some importance in trying to prevent those droplets from, falling on people or trying to consume the air. And, yeah, I feel like if there is a preference, or if there are any recommendations for what type of masks people should wear, I feel like this should be more announced, or people should have more information behind that, which is one thing I don't really like. Whenever I see the news, like, I see people talking about, oh yeah, like, if 80% of the people wore masks, it could help stop the spread a lot more faster. But at the same time, people also want to know what type of mask they should be wearing, because when you go out, you see people wearing, like, a variety of different types of masks. Like, they'll wear a cloth mask, they'll wear a surgical mask, or like industrial masks. Like, they're I feel like if it should be more important to let people know what type of mask to wear before they go out the house, or before they spend money on what type of mask should.
Right. Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah. So so the two global leading organizations in health are the CDC and the WHO. The CDC recommends that everyone wear a cloth face mask when they go outdoors. Because like you said, the disease is transmitted via droplets, and so if by wearing a mask you're catching the droplets before it's able to touch a surface, touch the ground, touch another person's like area. But a mask alone isn't going to necessarily protect you, and so this is where the WHO comes in. The WHO says face masks provide a false sense of security, in that people think that they're protected, so they're going to go ahead and do risky activities, such as going into a large gathering, or like going into an area and not practicing social distancing. So there's conflicting advices, but it's so important that you just cover your face in general and cover it adequately. Because if you, for example, are just wearing a face mask and keeping it under your chin, like you take it off to like breathe for a second or something, that's not wearing a face mask, because you could cough and you could still transmit the disease that way. And say, you have it on and you're going to a grocery store and you're like touching everything, you're touching your phone, and then you like go and scratch your face. If, for any reason your hands had touched an infected object and you touch your face, that could potentially be a source of transmission for you to get the disease. So wearing a face mask alone isn't going to help. You have to practice hand washing, washing your hands for 20 seconds with soap and water to make sure that you're removing any potential viruses, and also really maintaining social distancing, because you just don't know who you're going to be around, and you don't know whether they're sick or able to transmit the disease. We call them silent carriers. And so by practicing social distancing and assuming that everyone is sick is really your best bet. And honestly, stay at home. Staying at home is like your best defense at fighting COVID.
Yeah, well, I actually want to go into that more later on, but I think we could go more on like the business perspective of your MayLinhs mask. So
gotcha.
Yeah, and like in what places? Because I know because I saw on your Instagram page how you posted up a map of the different places and the different organizations that you also donate masks to, just around the country. So, in what places have you made the most sales? I'm assuming it's probably California. Like,
Yeah, I don't have the actual numbers, but wait, I have the actual numbers. Let me pull it up really quickly. But yeah, mostly in California. I have them by cities. I don't have them by states.
Okay.
Fortunately, but most of them. Let's see. Most of them are in California and Oakland. We've been partnering with churches, with nonprofit organizations, with food banks to donate these masks to. And then most of these organizations are in California, so that's why it's like so skewed. But also having friends from New York and from DC, Virginia, the DMV area, we've had a lot of orders there too. which has been amazing. And then more recently, I've partnered with Dayton VA to donate a bunch of masks to. So really, I can't just say California. California has the most customers per se, but the masks are really going everywhere. I have friends in Alaska who purchased them, Puerto Rico, Canada. I don't ship globally. This was like a specific case because they were friends. But Canada, Italy, Hawaii. So yeah, it's like not just California.
Yeah. Or like, do you mostly do the marketing off of places that have higher cases? Because like there are places in the country where the number of cases are pretty low. But like is like how do you market the masks? You know, besides posting the different types of masks on your website or on your Instagram page. Like what other forms of marketing do you do?
So actually, I only use Instagram, Instagram and Facebook to market. And it's been crazy because over 1,500 masks have been sold, which is absolutely insane to me because I don't think I know 1,500 people. But the fact that, social media just has such a wide reach is amazing. And, whenever I sell them to friends, their friends would tell their friends and their family. And so it's not just like my immediate contacts that I've been selling these to.
I see.
And I'm also, for some reason, banned on advertising on Instagram and Facebook. And so this is purely just because like people are sharing, my reach is mainly people sharing my posts. Yeah, I don't know why I got banned.
Oh man,
I have no idea, but it's okay. I mean, people are still buying. People are still somehow finding my website, which is great.
I mean, it's odd. Like I would figure, for something that you're doing, like why would Instagram ban you for that?
I have absolutely no idea. I think I just post so much, so I think that they think it's spam. But yeah, I don't know why they banned me. I also, for some reason, can't post on Craigslist and I can't post on Facebook Market. So all of my marketing has been on my personal Instagram page and also my personal Facebook.
Let's see. Okay. But so just knowing that that your mask had you have different varieties of color forms. So which mask right now or which mask design is the best seller currently?
Ooh, great question. Our best seller would have to be the black mask, the Power Blackout, which was actually named after a local company's decision to cut people's power off in California. But it's called the Power Blackout, and that is our biggest selling mask. But also we have this black paisley design that's been really popular. And we sold out of this like tropical design because a lot of people love dark tropical colors. But yeah.
Awesome. So, for everybody that is listening and, knowing your background with, health and also, going to different countries and studying the health effects in other countries and also trying to find ways to, just to stop the spread of COVID-19. So why is it important for people to wear masks during the pandemic?
Yeah, so wearing a face mask in general is important to slow the spread of COVID. So much research is being done as we speak on this disease, and there's just so much uncertainty. And so what we know right now is that, it's a respiratory disease and it's spread via droplets. We also know that it's human to human transmission. And so I can transmit it to you, to my mom. Like, it doesn't discriminate. It will infect anyone and everyone that it can. People may possibly be immune to it, but we don't know to what extent. We can be immune to this strain, but we might not be immune to a mutant strain in the future. And so the reason why wearing a face mask is important is because we don't know a lot about COVID, but what we do know, with the information that we do know, we can find a way to pretty much halt the disease transmission. To sort of because we don't have a vaccine, we don't have a lot of things for this disease yet. What we do have are face masks, and that is like our first line of defense that we can use now.
So it is highly important for people to wear face masks, knowing that there hasn't been any vaccine or any type of treatment for it. Because knowing that there isn't a vaccine or a treatment for it, and all the cases keep popping up. So as far as people surviving from it, do you know what the process or what the procedures are like in hospitals for people that are currently in ICU, or people that are just coming out of the hospital that were tested positive of coronavirus? Is like how is the treatment, or what are medical officials trying to do in order to survive as many patients as they can?
Well, I don't work in the hospital setting, so I wouldn't know specifically what they're doing, but from like the very general basis of like what's going on, there's no treatment for COVID-19, but people experience different symptoms, and what the hospital is doing is treating their symptoms. And so, if you just have a cough and you get diagnosed with pneumonia, but your body's strong enough to fight it, then they'll probably just send you home with Theraflu or whatever treatment that you need. But it's a virus, so you can't take antibiotics for it. But for those who have a weakened immune system and their cases are more severe, especially, this can happen to anyone, but it's being seen predominantly in the older population, where they're on ventilators. Unfortunately, some do make it, but unfortunately a lot don't make it. And so what hospital staff are doing is sort of triaging people to, if you're healthy enough to rest and go home, then go home. But unfortunately, if you are not, then you have to stay until either you succumb to the illness or you get better.
I see. Also, I think another thing that should be brought up with, summer is just around the corner, or I don't know, I think we are currently in summer with the way that the weather's been. But yeah, like with the summer coming around the corner, like of course California, they're going through different phases of trying to reopen, and even a lot of other states around the country going through the phases of reopening businesses, reopening parks, other stores. And I think, like, for me, like from my perspective, whenever I'm out door dashing, like I rarely see people walk. Like I think probably like maybe a month ago or maybe like a few weeks back, I would see more people wearing masks. But as of like the past few days that I've been out working, I've kind of been seeing a decline of people wearing masks and not practicing the social distancing guidelines as well as they should be. So do you think that with the summer months coming up, and just the fact that our politicians are allowing for more businesses to go back to normal, or in some way trying to just to get more funding, or trying to bounce back from the recession that they had, do you think the mask will still be do you think the mask protocol will still be in place during the summer months?
Oh my goodness, yes, of course. So the current policy, let's backtrack. Economies are opening up not because the disease is cured, or not because there's a solution to the disease. Economies are opening up because of financial reasons. People are begging to go back to work. People are trying to regain their source of income and regain some sort of normalcy after everything that's happened, without realizing like the health repercussions that may follow. This disease may come back a second time around, and maybe with a greater vengeance. We don't know. There's just so much uncertainty.
What about
with what we do?
What about the second wave that everybody's been talking about? So like I heard the second wave isn't isn't prepared to hit until fall, like where the numbers could possibly have another increase.
For sure, because people are, well, I'm actually very fascinated to see what the data shows in 2 weeks, because that's normally the transmission period, 5 to 14 days. 5 to 14 days is when people start showing symptoms. And so given the past Memorial Day weekend with people out and about, they may have gotten infected while they were not practicing social distancing, while they were at their barbecues, while they were picnicking. So I'm fascinated to see what the data is going to be like in 2 weeks, to see whether or not there is a spike. And I think that this weekend was so crucial in determining whether or not it is right for our economies to be opening up now. But
yeah, I feel like, like this is, the time of the year where a lot of holidays popped up. I know a month ago when it was Easter, like churches were like, well, like, I still want to be able to go to church, and I still want to go to service. And I guess, like for people that do go to church, they've been trying hard to, still feel like, oh, like, I feel like I should still be going to church, because, like, well, like for me, like, me being a churchgoer, what my church has been doing, we've been doing like the virtual sermons. Like my pastor like records the sermons and posts it on Facebook Live, or other churches, they have different formats. And even just with like Easter coming about, churches thought like, oh, well, Easter's gonna be different. But then the next month, like Mother's Day was a bit slow, because people expect to take their moms to the restaurants, and like, and with restaurants being closed, and and even like people knowing that their mothers are a lot older than them, they can't go to their house, or they can't celebrate with them, because like, there's a possibility that what the media was saying, there's a possibility that you could infect your loved ones if you spend time with them, just knowing like they're like just how old they are. And like recently with Memorial Day, like, and it really shocked me when I looked on the news, like how many people were going to like the barbecues, like the beach, or just out with their friends and stuff, just partying. And I don't know, I feel like with all that in place and all that happening, and just with the fact that we're going into month 3 of like the quarantine and the shelter in place, I feel like this is the time where people are starting to, like they're kind of at their breaking point where, I just want to go back to living a normal life. And it's kind of hard to do that, because, like you said, like we're unsure of how far or how long this COVID-19 thing could last. And without a sure vaccination or a sure treatment to cure the disease completely, I feel like that's what people aren't understanding about this whole situation.
Yeah, absolutely. People don't realize that it can affect them until they themselves get sick. And it's actually really interesting to see how America and Americans are handling it as compared to individuals living in countries that have experienced respiratory diseases like MERS or SARS. So Korea, Japan, Vietnam, it's pretty common to go around wearing a face mask. And so they were able to open up their economies because everyone is already wearing a face mask and it's already standard protocol. They've had several diseases pop up in the past 2 decades. And so this isn't their first rodeo. Whereas in the States, this is the first in a while where a respiratory infectious disease is popping up. And so people just aren't realizing the severity of it because this is kind of like we're testing the waters. We've never gone through it before, so we don't know. But going back to what you said about, I had an anecdote. So my roommate in college, she's actually from New York, and one of her relatives passed away, not due to COVID, but passed away in March. And this was before the shelter in place was mandated. But they passed away, and a bunch of family members went to the funeral. And one person in that attended that funeral was positive for COVID. And then spread it to spread it to 4 family members, and 2 of which unfortunately passed away. And so her mom is fine. Her mom was actually tested positive for COVID, but her mom isolated for 14 days, didn't talk to the family, like scrubbed down everything around the house. And so her mom eventually beated COVID, but unfortunately the 2 other members, which is the mom of the person that was initially deceased, who the funeral was for, and another aunt, unfortunately passed away. And so because of that, it's just so important that we are still practicing social distancing, and we remember that, this disease does not discriminate, and you can potentially pass it on to someone that you love unknowingly. And it would feel so horrible if, their death or their illness is because of inconsiderate actions on your part. So I don't think that Americans are quite there yet. Americans are very much individualistic and thinking, I need to go to work, I need to support my family, I need to make sure that I'm okay, like I'm not X, Y, and Z. Whereas in a lot of other cultures who have seen these diseases before, they're very much, I'm okay with staying at home. I'm okay with not working for a couple of weeks, a couple of months, if that means that my family and like everyone else is safe. And so it's kind of sad that, we're itching to get out there and we're itching to return to normalcy without realizing that it's not going to be normal anymore after this.
Yeah, I feel like in the United States, I feel like there wasn't that much of a preparation or some type of protocol at all, because this the virus started back in December when the first case was announced in Wuhan, and in just knowing that our current administration, they kind of had more, I would say, bigger fish to fry at the time, just the impeachment trials and just everything else that was going on from the country. I felt like there wasn't, our president or just our political officials didn't even though he was reminded countless number of times in the span of a month that there is a possibility that the virus could spread over to the US, and just him not taking bigger precautions to the spread and not letting people knowing and just kind of focusing on himself more than on the 330 million people that live here. I feel as if the virus could have, if our leaders could have had more of a focus in trying to stop it, when the iron was hot, then we probably wouldn't be in the situation where we are now. But I don't know, I guess, do you have any opinions on that? What do you think our country could have done beforehand for us to not be in the situation where we are now?
Yeah, so that's tricky because that's a very compact question.
Yeah, I mean,
I have a lot of opinions, yeah. But we could have definitely taken it more seriously, which we did not do. There were a lot of things going on at the start of 2020. We were on the brink of World War III. I don't know if you remember that. That was January 3rd. The impeachment trials were going on, so a lot of media attention was focused on that. We thought that because Wuhan was on lockdown, that meant that no one could escape Wuhan. But if you followed closely, leading up to the lockdown, there were still chartered flights going out of Wuhan. And so Americans were returning back home, foreigners were going back to their home country, which shouldn't have happened, in my opinion. But, people wanted to go home. They had nowhere else to stay. So many steps could have been taken to prevent it. We could have mobilized resources to our frontline workers. We could have ramped up production of masks. We could have ramped up production of a lot of essential supplies. We could have done a lot. We could have done a lot more, but we didn't. But we also haven't experienced this enough to know like what to do, or we didn't know much about the disease, because I don't know if you remembered, but in February, which was Lunar New Year's, a lot of celebrations were still happening because people didn't realize that it could be spread human to human. We didn't know that it was a we didn't know how the disease transmission, basically. So we didn't realize that, you know, you could spread it even if you aren't showing symptoms, or you can spread it via coughing or just via touching unsanitary objects. So we just didn't know a lot. And because of that, we didn't know what to do.
Yeah. I think with my story of how I kind of knew that there was a big problem, because it really, I remember it like it was yesterday. Like, I remember it was the first day when when we came back from spring break. Like, I was like,
I see.
I was actually in Chicago for spring break visiting my sister, and you know, again, they like at the time there were even like a few cases already popping up in the Cook County, like that's the county that Chicago's in, or like that Chicagoland area. There are a few cases, but at the time, you know, it was like, that was like mid-March, or not, mid-March or mid-April. Mid-March. So at that time, you know, the virus, it wasn't really as serious than it was, but then, you know, like, that Monday when I came back to New York, I remember I only went to class for one day, like after spring break. And then like later that night, I was in my room with my roommates, and then like we got an email on our phones, like from the school saying, hey, school is going to be shifting to online classes for the next few days. And then later on it led to, oh, the school is going to get shut down like for 2 weeks. And then next thing led to another thing, you know, like, oh, students have to go home. Like if you live close enough, or pack up and go home, like class will resume online. And then another thing, then the next day, it came to someone on campus, because like the way it worked, like all my roommates left that Tuesday night. They all went home, and like since like me living in California, I knew there wasn't gonna be a way for me to get back home and like the next day, because you know, like you probably know when you go home and visit your family, that plane ticket from the East Coast costs a lot for, you know, just to get back to the West Coast. Yeah, it's not cheap at all. But like, so my initial plan was to stay on campus like for the 2 weeks, and you're like, oh, you know, I'll still be able to like go to class online. You know, I have food in my dorm, like I have entertainment to, you know, keep myself occupied. And then next thing you know, it was a Friday, and one of the employees on campus, I think it was either like a professor or a maintenance person. They like, so it was somebody that tested positive for COVID-19. And then just knowing like how big New York is, and just how New York was the epicenter, or is the epicenter for COVID-19, and just the problems that they were having, it turned into me trying to find a way home. But luckily my mom called me that night saying, hey Phil, we need to get you on a plane because New York is close to shutting down. So like, you know, like my mom was able to get me a plane ticket. Like I packed up most of my things, and you know, I was on the first flight that morning back to Oakland. And then knowing that like like really this campus was supposed to be closed for like the 2 weeks, then it led to campus being closed for the rest of the semester. And then that's when like, I think by that time, that's when I knew, this is a problem. This is something that's going to affect all of us. And then a lot of other schools across the country started closing, and then business started closing, like high schools, middle schools, elementary schools, like business offices, airlines, they all started shutting down.
Yeah. Were you able to get all of your belongings out, or are your belongings still in your dorm?
I wasn't able to get everything. Like really the things that I packed most of my clothes, some of my clothes, but there's a lot of things that I left behind. Like I left kitchen supplies, I left more clothes, I left you know, a few other knickknacks that I have in my dorm. And like, so a lot of my roommates, they left a lot of their stuff behind. And right now, St. John's, they haven't really set up like a set in stone plan for when we could get our stuff back. or like right now, like the current state of returning to campus, they say they want us back in the fall, but I doubt that's probably going to happen, knowing that, yeah, we spent the 2.5 months studying online. And even though Andrew Cuomo, he is reopening a few counties in New York, like New York City, where like St. John's, the campus is in Queens. So New York City is still like that epicenter, and still there's still a lot of cases popping up. And I think that like New York at one point had the highest death toll as far as COVID-19 in the country. And I just don't see, like right now, like I'm not seeing us returning to campus in the fall, because like if California is planning to have all the schools still having online classes, then I could see New York going into that same direction.
Right. Well, yeah, I don't know how schools are going to be handling it, especially because schools are anywhere where a significant amount of people are living in a closed area, such as a dormitory. Those are pretty much like just disease transmission incubators. I'm not comparing schools to prisons, but like prisons are also, because everyone's in closed quarters, it's also a really big transmission. So I can't even imagine what the protocols are going to be for schools to reopen again. But I do imagine that it's going to be very different, and it's going to be weird for a very long time before we find any solutions. But I don't know, maybe we can learn from countries who have had respiratory diseases before and see what they did, and maybe that would be our best bet to learn from countries who've had experienced it in the past. Right. But it's really unfortunate that you were able to, or that you weren't able to grab your stuff, and that it's still very uncertain. I know that colleges, that network, that community is so important, and online classes won't provide that same community. So it's really unfortunate that you're experiencing college at this time.
Yeah, I mean, again, I never expected my freshman year to go this way, but at least
like anyone expected 2020 to go this way.
At least I know for the future, when like when I have kids, and when I'm sending them off to college, I'll have to be the one to tell them, like, so yeah, like, just make sure you enjoy the heck out of college, because there was at one point where there were students like me that didn't really have that full college experience for a short amount of time. And they're probably gonna be reading about it in their textbooks, and just the impact of it. But
back in 2020, we had to all transition to Zoom University.
Zoom University. Actually, I actually did an episode on that. It's called Fast Times at Zoom University. We talked about the impact of how Zoom and college and high school has impacted with students like myself. But Oh, MayLin, we're gonna wrap up pretty soon here, but I want to ask you one more question before we sign off. So, just knowing your background with health, and even going to college, and studying health on a global scale. So, how much impact do you believe your business has had on the COVID-19 pandemic?
Ooh, how much impact? Well, I'm doing the best that I can to make masks accessible, and also making sure that our frontline workers making sure that the N95, the essential supplies, are staying in the hands of frontline workers. And so by giving the public this alternative cloth face mask, I'm really hoping that people aren't hoarding on essential supplies. I don't know to what scale my specific business is going to be affecting it, but I know a ton of people are making face masks. And so collectively, we are all working together to provide people with an alternative, so that 3M, the company that makes the N95s, can do their best to just supply our frontline workers, our doctors, our physicians, people working with COVID patients every day. So I'm really hoping that, my masks are accessible, and cute enough for people to want to wear outdoors and comfortable enough for them to wear it when they're exercising. And just in general, making sure that people are aware that face masks are going to be the new norm for us until we find a vaccine or until we find a solution to COVID, to fight COVID.
Yeah. Oh yeah, all of that's great. And yeah, MayLin, thanks again for coming on the podcast. And yeah, I feel like, it's great to have a representative like you telling us about just the importance of mask wearing and the importance of social distancing during this pandemic, because yeah, people will say that the pandemic isn't really going to be going anywhere anytime soon. Like we're like, again, like they said that the timeline for a vaccination is going to be another 12 or 18 months. So yeah, just knowing
developing a vaccine is very difficult.
Yeah. So knowing that there is going to be a bit of time until we can go back to going to the movies and going back to school, and us sports fans going back to going to sporting events again. It is going to be a time until we can do that again. But yeah, for the time now, it's glad that we have people like you helping stop the spread with your mask. And yeah, we just, I just wish you the best of luck for your business.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Philip. I also did want to say that you can use the discount code Oakland at checkout, and it'll give you 25% off of our mask.
All right.
Because we want to be able to
awesome.
Make it affordable for everyone.
Yeah. And again, yeah, I will leave a link in the description so you go check out MayLinhs' line of masks. And yeah, definitely get one for yourself if you don't have one already. Like, hopefully you do have one, but if you want to accessorize and you want to add a little bit of style to your mask, yeah, then definitely go check out a MayLinhs mask. And yeah, so So anyway, that has been the Real Deal Bros podcast for today. And again, yeah, thank you all for listening and tune in. Make sure to check us out on Spotify and here on YouTube. Like, comment, and subscribe to our channel, as we are still steadily growing, and we're just trying to get as many listeners and as many subscribers as we can, so we can still bring out content that is very important to us and also very important to you as well. So again, I've been Philip Hall, along with my guest, May-Linh Huynh. And as always, make sure to keep it real.